West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
And a brand new filing that we are just getting our hands on tonight. The special counsel, Jack Smith, is calling on the Supreme Court to reject Trump's claim of absolute immunity. Prosecutors are going to be making their case about this in person, face-to-face with the justices, in just over 2 weeks from tonight. But right now, Smith is giving us a preview of his argument, and he says, and I'm quoting him here, the closest historical analog is President Nixon's official conduct in Watergate, and his acceptance of a pardon implied his and President Ford's recognition that a former president was subject to prosecution. Few people are really more qualified to talk about the parallels here between these two cases than the guest who joins me now, Richard Nixon's former White House counsel, John Dean. And as usual, John Dean, it's great to have you. And just as you're reading through Jack Smith's argument, I wonder what stood out to you given your experience.
Well, first, I thought it was an elegant brief. I've made a very fast trip through it at this stage. And he really relies on two core arguments. One is the historical argument that you mentioned, but before that, he also relies on the basic separation of powers, that if Trump had his way, there'd be no check on a president. And that's so contrary to our system, and it's unprecedented just in asking and even suggesting as a possibility. But you're right, the core of the argument is the historical argument.
Yeah, they argue at one point that, you know, if Trump's argument stood that presidents could commit bribery and treason and sedition, and they list all of this and saying that that's not how it works. But what part of it seems to be getting at is this idea of official acts versus private acts and some parts of immunity. And where the ballgame really seems to be is where they argue, you know, that even if Donald Trump can make the argument that some presidents do enjoy immunity, that, you know, they said this is a private scheme with private actors to achieve a private end. His effort to remain in power by fraud.
Well, you're right. This business of the official or non-official acts is that Trump is really trying to stretch a civil case into a criminal situation. That's the Fitzgerald case. And this brief very clearly knocks that down. First, that a criminal case is so much more weighty and important in the greater scheme of things than a civil case. So they argue they just aren't, you can't take the same principles and apply them. Secondly, they go on to argue that, again, in a historical context, you cannot take that case and take it the distance. It just won't stretch that far. So it's a good job of knocking down Trump's brief in total. It sort of eclipsed it as the day, the metaphor for the day.
I picked that up, John Dean. That was very clever. But when you look at this in and of itself, one thing that I had heard could be successful from people in Trump's orbit, you know, recently was in Trump's filing, he and his attorneys kind of floated this option of sending the case back down to lower courts until other issues are decided here. But the special counsel seems to be basically rejecting that, saying that that's not an option here. If you do take up on that premise that a lower court needs to decide this, they can decide that later on, and this case can get moving forward again.
The special counsel goes head on that argument and says that what this court, the Supreme Court, should do, if they find any reason that there is any kind of immunity that they suggest is potentially applicable here, that the record has to be established during the trial, and it can be done by the judge at the lower court. The trial can go forward, and an appropriate instruction can be given to the jury as well, as the judge protects the evidence that comes in and controls it during the trial. So there's no reason for a separate hearing to send this back down to the lower court, to the district court, to have a trial on that issue as to whether these are official acts or even that would be applicable or not. They say, let's just get on with a trial, and I think they make the argument that will carry the day.
You think that it'll carry the day? We will see if it does. Those arguments are starting very soon. John Dean will bring you back when that happens. Thank you for that. And from one Trump legal case to his hush money trial that is actually scheduled to start here in New York City 1 week from today, a judge has ruled it will stay in Manhattan after Trump was shut down, and his latest, but I should note, probably not his last based on what we've been hearing from our sources, attempt to keep this trial from starting as it is scheduled to. We've also just obtained the questions that are going to go into picking the 12 men and women who are going to hold the fate of the presumptive Republican presidential nominee in their hands. We'll share those with you in a moment. Jennifer Rogers is a CNN legal analyst and former federal prosecutor. And when, what Trump is trying to do here was to get the case moved out of New York, saying that essentially his team is arguing that there's been so much publicity around this that people already have a negative view of Trump and that he can't get a fair trial. The judge today said no.
Yeah, this is to move from one theme, the eclipse, to another theme of this month, the NCAA tournament. This is garbage time, right? This is the very last minute throwing everything at the wall to see what will stick. This is them doing their own polling and saying, well, our polling shows that people here aren't fair. And so we need to move this trial out of Manhattan, and we need to do it now. This is just one of many attempts that is not going to work at the very last minute. He actually has 3 motions pending now, all really just designed to try to stop it.
They are so desperate to move this, to delay this trial from starting.
Yeah, well, once it starts, it's not going to stop. So really their last chance is to get some judge to intervene and say, okay, this might not have merit, but we do want to resolve all of these questions before we start. He's really hoping that, they've been bending over backwards to resolve all of his issues, right? And that's what he's trying to do. Keep throwing them out, hoping that a judge will say, let's just book it back a week, 2 weeks, whatever, anything to stop it from starting.
Okay, but it does seem like it is going forward right now. Knock on wood, we'll see what happens. But with the jury selection beginning, and we're getting a look at what they want to ask these prospective jurors, and some of these questions are really interesting to me. Have you ever considered yourself a supporter or belong to the QAnon movement, Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, 3%ers, Antifa? Do you have any strong opinions or firmly held beliefs about whether a former president may be criminally charged in a state court? Do you have any strong opinions or firmly held beliefs about former President Donald Trump, or the fact that he's a current candidate, or would that be able to interfere with you being a fair and impartial juror? What does it say to you based on what these questions are going to look like?
Well, both parties want to know what these jurors think of Trump, right? So they're trying to get at it without asking directly, are you a Republican? Do you support Trump? Did you vote for Trump? You're not supposed to ask things like who jurors voted for. So these are proxy questions for that. If people are QAnon supporters, if they have strong beliefs about the Proud Boys, et cetera, that doesn't automatically get them off the jury, but that gives the parties guidance because they have these peremptory challenges, right, where they don't have to give reasons. And so both sides want to know the answers to these questions. By the way, they ask also, do you have any strong, anti-Trump views, and have you participated in any of those movements as well? So both sides want to know that so that they know who to strike.
How does it work with the question, though? Do you have any strong opinions or firmly held beliefs about former President Donald Trump? I mean, wouldn't that kind of apply to basically everybody?
Yeah, and if they all say yes, then it doesn't really get anywhere, right? It doesn't help them at all. So a lot of these are going to be, not super helpful, but they just kind of dig through and they try to rank their jurors and then decide accordingly.
I mean, and this really matters if you're, regardless of which side you're on and who's looking at this, because one juror could throw off Alvin Bragg's entire effort to prosecute Donald Trump here. I mean, that's all it would take.
It has to be unanimous. So both sides spent a lot of time on this. I'm sure Trump's spending a lot of money on jury consultants and the like. They both want to make sure that no one is going to be.
How long do you think it'll take to get a jury? They're going to be looking this carefully.
Yeah, about a week, they're saying. It takes longer in state court because the parties get to ask questions. There will be follow-up questions after these questionnaires. So I would say about a week, maybe a little more.
Jennifer Rogers, we will be marking our calendars. Thank you so much.
It is Tuesday, the 9th of April of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. It always has, and it always will. Yes, spicy. Okay, so how are you on this post-Great American Eclipse Day? Yeah, everything revolves around us. You would think. But, yeah, so it was quite a spectacle. You know, we only had 30% impartial totality here. So, in Oregon, we just didn't care. 30%. Who's looking up for that? Well, it was still quite fun, and we've had quite a bit of totality just recently here in Oregon, you know, within the last several years at least, and it was quite something. So, yeah, if you ever get a chance to be in a part of the world where that will happen, take part. It's all okay. Okay. So, what else happened? Did Donald Trump try to eclipse everything that's come before? Oh, yes, he has. Yeah, he blots out the sun, everything that gives nourishment to life itself. Temperature drops. People don't realize that. You know, when you block the sun, yeah, it's going to get cooler. Quite a bit. 20 degrees in some instances, even more. So when something as odious as a Donald Trump starts blocking out everything, yeah, temperature's going to drop in some places and is going to raise temperatures for others. Okay, enough of that. We could go on, but we're not. Okay, a little bit of personal news, since there's been a bit of personal happening here at the mothership of Netroots Radio. Mom's doing just fine. A little bit of discomfort at the incision, and that's to be expected. Other medical issues that are attributed to having surgery and taking opiates, and you probably know what I mean. I got to get her some prune juice or something stronger. We're going to try the prune juice first, and then we'll go to more desperate measures. And by desperate, you know, is over the counter desperate measures, which can be, I don't know. Sometimes when people do their own research, we see what happens. But we're going to start off with a prune juice and see if that helps. And it's been a bit sunny here. We're expecting some rain late weekend. And we're supposed to have some pretty nice days. The nights are a bit cooler, and we'll get to that in the weather section of our fabulous salon here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. But a little bit cooler nights, upper 30s, low 40s. Though last night here at the mothership, I should note that the weather station for the Weather Underground is several hundred feet above where we are in terms of elevation. And I make allowances for that difference. The digital weather station I have here at the mothership, which is not capable of hooking up to the Weather Underground, though I have considered personally getting a weather station with a little weather vane and precipitation meter and all that. and then hooking up, but I haven't pulled the trigger on that one yet. Regardless, the one that I have here at the mothership is different in terms of ambient temperature right outside the front door. And last night it didn't really get much down below 50, and we were supposed to be in the upper 30s according to the weather station nearby. And that says something about microclimates. Okay? Everybody thinks that a microclimate doesn't exist. It does. Everybody. Well, live in San Francisco and you know what I mean. Places like Southern California, the Southern California LA basin, there might not be such gross differences from climate in Santa Monica and all the way up to, Huntington Beach. It could be all the same. It could. It could. And it often is. Anyway, so we'll be getting Mom out in the sun and stimulate the hypothalamus, which is very important, as you know, since we just worshiped the sun, or was it the moon yesterday? Or was it the confluence of those two celestial bodies in their cosmic dance? I think that's what it was. Okay, what do we have in store for you here in the curated part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Yes, starting at the top. In a scathing 66-page filing, Jack Smith urged the Supreme Court to reject Trump's claims of complete and total immunity. I know at least 2 or 3 justices who think that he has complete and total immunity. Yeah. Then on the rest of the menu, new California legislation seeks to permanently ban paraquat, a powerful and widely used weed killer that has been linked to Parkinson's disease. We all remember paraquat because that's what they were trying to spray it pot with, in the hopes that maybe it would kill it before people smoked it. And guess what? People did. I stayed clear. I hope. We all hope. West Virginia had a whopping 5 tornadoes last week, more than double its yearly average, and it's only April. And hydropower generated for electricity from Oregon and Washington dams fell to historically low levels last year, and experts expect it to drop further by year's end. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where an espionage scandal rocking Austria is laying bare Russian spying operations across Europe. Yeah, it's not a hoax. It's real. It has been for quite some time. And the Panama Papers trial has begun 8 years after the international tax evasion scandal was first exposed. 2 tiers of justice. Remember that. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. Across the page to the left from that chat room link is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could possibly send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, if you could do that once a month, thus becoming a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really does help us pay our bills and, of course, all the other costs associated with running this powerhouse of resistance. So thank you to those of you who have been so generous over these many, many years, and also to those of you who have recently been so generous, and thank you all. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio, you can do so on social media by going to, in most cases, at Netroots Radio, and in others, simply just Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of those, and we dabble in it ourselves a little bit too, especially on Facebook. But Tom takes care of all of those, and both he and Kelly do a lot more than those stated duties, so thank you both. You can follow me, of course, on social media at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime, so you have quick access to the actual articles and by the actual reporters, because that's how it is done. So there, follow me at Justice Putnam. You can also follow the show. It's only a placeholder. I'll get on it soon. I've been saying that for a few years at least. But regardless, you can find the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And please, most importantly, pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, even Audible now. We're on Audible. So pick up those podcasts, please. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, is by Haley Smith from the Los Angeles Times. New California legislation seeks to permanently ban paraquat, a powerful and widely used weed killer that has been linked to Parkinson's disease and other serious health issues. We all told everybody that they're going to kill people with this poison. Remember when they put poison into liquor during Prohibition? And a lot of people died. They don't care. But we should. Anyway, Assembly Bill 1963, introduced recently by Assembly member Laura Friedman from Glendale, a Democratic member, by the way, would sunset the use of paraquat beginning in January 2026. The herbicide, which is described by the EPA as highly toxic, is regularly sprayed on almonds, grapes, cotton, and other crops in the state. Sometimes even paraquat is sprayed on pot. Paraquat is banned in more than 60, that's 60 countries, including those with large agricultural economies like the UK, China, Brazil, and the members of the EU, Friedman said during a news conference. When, California should follow their lead. Yeah, but we don't care what other people are doing because we're exceptional. California is the nation's top user of paraquat, spraying millions of pounds annually. Environmental and public health groups have said exposure to the product is associated with Parkinson's, non-Hodgkin lymphoma, childhood leukemia, and other ailments. California needs to be a leader in eliminating highly toxic pesticides like paraquat. It's an herbicide. We need to put public safety and environmental sustainability first and foremost in keeping with California values. A recent Los Angeles Times report documenting concerns about paraquat highlighted one of more than 3,600 lawsuits that have been filed in state and federal courts seeking damages related to exposure to the product. Paraquat is manufactured by Syngenta, a Switzerland-based company that is owned by the Chinese government. And unsurprisingly, the chemical is banned in both Switzerland and China. Syngenta emphatically rejects claims of links between paraquat and Parkinson's disease and other elements because if they accepted the fact, they'd have to pay, in this reporter's opinion. Recent research has found that farm workers and low-income Latino people are disproportionately exposed to paraquat in their communities. Kern County is a hot spot for paraquat application in the state. More than 5.3 million pounds were sprayed there between 2017 and 2021, according to a March report from the nonprofit Environmental Working Group. Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The National Weather Service yesterday, Monday, confirmed a fifth tornado touched down during severe storms that barreled across West Virginia last week. That's more than double the state's average for an entire year. West Virginia saw an average of 2 tornadoes per year from 1993 to 2022. The most tornadoes recorded in the state by the Weather Service in 1 year was 15 back in 1998. The Weather Service said the weak tornado hit along the Wayne-Cabell County line, south of the Ohio River community of Huntington. It had maximum winds of 100 miles per hour and a path length of about a half mile. It caused extensive tree damage and destroyed or damaged several structures. No deaths were reported from any of the 5 tornadoes on April 2nd. 3 twisters were confirmed in Kanawha County, and 1 was in Fayette. Or is it Fayette? It's Fayette. Governor Jim Justice, no relation, has declared a state of emergency from the storms in 15 of West Virginia's 55 counties, allowing state resources to be used and emergency response efforts to be expedited. That's very generous of him. The storms produced moderate flooding along some Ohio River communities. Oregon Public Broadcasting brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Hydropower generated for electricity from Oregon and Washington dams fell to historically low levels last year, and experts expect it to drop further by year's end. Officials at the U.S. Energy Information Administration recently published data showing that hydropower generation in the Northwest between October 1st of 2022 and September 30th of 2023 dropped to a 22-year low. 11 western states produce up to 60% of the country's hydroelectricity. Washington, California, and Oregon are the three largest contributors, with Oregon and Washington producing more than 1/3 of all U.S. hydropower. Wow, that's pretty damn good. No pun intended. Both Oregon and Washington generated 20% less hydropower in 2023 than in 2021. The agency attributed this to low precipitation in the fall and winter and the May 2023 heat dome that drove regional temperatures up 30 degrees Fahrenheit above average and rapidly melted snowpack in the region, which traditionally feeds rivers and streams steadily throughout the summer. More frequent periods of drought, high temperatures, and heavy rains could further influence hydropower production in the future. Officials at the Bonneville Power Administration, a federal agency in charge of marketing and coordinating all federally owned dams in the Northwest, said they've begun taking recent climatic changes into account when they budget for annual energy availability. Wait a second. Insurance companies have been doing that for a long time. You're just now starting? We'll see. Do whatever the actuaries do. That's what I say. Historically, we have drawn upon a 90-year data set that stretched back to 1929. We moved to using the latest 30 years of available data in order to capture the variability we are seeing, said Kevin Wingert, a communications officer for the agency. Patterns and trends that we witnessed in the 30s and 40s were becoming increasingly irrelevant to our modern experience. There are 150 hydropower dams in the Columbia River Basin, spanning parts of Canada, Montana, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. There are 18 hydroelectric dams on the main stem of the Columbia River and the Snake River, the main tributary to the Columbia River. These dams provide electricity to 60% of people in the Northwest and account for 90% of renewable energy generation in the region, according to the Bonneville Power Administration. Well, that brings us to our break. And damn right, no pun intended. And now let us go to our break, and when we get back from said break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 a.m, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes, their age, the way they speak? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for summer break
because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a single father of 2 who works 3
part-time jobs and still can't put enough food on the table?
Or maybe a mother who cleans offices at night?
Hoping to find meeting leftovers to take home to her hungry family.
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing
a job and getting back on his feet.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For older adults, optimal aging includes preventing injuries, effectively managing existing chronic conditions, and maintaining physical and cognitive health and social engagement. I'm Dr. Linda Anderson, Director of CDC's Healthy Aging Program. The promotion of cognitive health is a critical component of overall good health. Cognitive health among older adults is not just the absence of disease. It's the development and preservation of cognitive abilities such as memory, language, judgment, and remembered skills such as driving. Cognitive abilities enable individuals to maintain social connectedness, an ongoing sense of purpose, and the ability to function independently. In 2013, CDC and the Alzheimer's Association released the second in a series of roadmaps. This roadmap, the Public Health Roadmap for State and National Partnerships 2013 to 2018, was developed as part of CDC's Healthy Brain Initiative. It reflects the insights and expertise of a wide range of stakeholders at the national, state, and community levels. The roadmap shares the Healthy Brain Initiative's vision of cognitive health as a vital component of overall health and well-being, an area ripe for public health efforts. Specific actions are addressed in 4 traditional domains of public health. The first is monitor and evaluate. Tracking the health of the nation is a fundamental public health function. Actions in this area include assessments related to cognitive health that help quantify and qualify the public health impact and inform public health policies and strategies. The second domain is educate and empower the nation, which focuses on actions that raise public awareness and improve access to information and resources. The third domain, develop policy and mobilize partnerships, includes actions aimed at ensuring that cognitive health is integrated into a broad spectrum of public health work. The fourth area, assure a competent workforce, focuses on preparing public health professionals to translate current and emerging findings on cognitive health into effective public health practice. This roadmap provides a solid foundation for the public health community to anticipate and respond as new scientific discoveries related to cognitive health emerge. Public health agencies and partners are encouraged to work together on actions that best fit their mission, needs, interests, and capabilities. For more information, please visit cdc.gov/aging/healthybrain.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
I'm Clara Moskowitz, and this is Science Quickly. I'm here in South Texas, hoping to catch a glimpse of the eclipse this afternoon. The feeling of a total solar eclipse is intense, and the sights, sensations, and emotions can overwhelm you even if you think you know what's coming. And so I sat down with Kate Russo, a psychologist, author, and eclipse chaser, who's seen 13 total solar eclipses over the last 25 years, to talk about what to expect. She explains the experience of an eclipse in 4 minutes and 25 seconds, the exact length of totality here where we are in Texas.
I started chasing eclipses in 1999, and since I became so obsessed with them, I've tried to see every single one that I can. A total solar eclipse happens once in every 18 months. Somewhere around the world, we have to chase them. And so I try and get into the path every single time. And so that's the default setting. I will always try and be there. But, you know, sometimes life happens. Sometimes the circumstances means that you can't travel, you have to miss it. It might be too expensive. So I have missed one or two of them, but I tell you what, I will be chasing for as long as I can until I can't do it anymore. That's the plan. If you think about it, the celestial mechanics is the same, right? The moon slowly moves in front of the sun, the total eclipse happens, and then the moon continues until they're not connected anymore. But there are so many differences. So the path of totality always goes over different areas, and you could be in a position along the path where you're seeing it at sunrise or in the middle of the day or at sunset. And so sometimes you're looking right up, sometimes you're looking on the horizon and you're seeing it, and you can see the moon's shadow, the cone of the shadow. Other times it's cloudy, other times it's brilliant sunshine. You're also experiencing it with different cultures and people you've never met before. So we don't just visit a place, see the eclipse and go. Often, you know, you experience culture and how people make sense of it. Every experience is unique and different and wonderful. And even though you know what's coming, it still takes you by surprise. And it's like an embodied experience. And by that we mean that it happens to us on a very physical level. And a few years ago now, about 10 years ago, I did a survey on eclipse chasers. And I asked them, what emotions do you experience during totality? And the interesting thing I found in this survey was that everybody was saying the same thing. There was a similar pattern that people were going through. And so it starts with that sense of you're watching the partial eclipse, it's really interesting, but there is a moment that you notice that something's gone a little bit wrong, that sense of wrongness. So the light doesn't quite look the same as what it normally does. Everything's just a bit weird. There's this darkening in the sky. The wind kind of picks up or changes direction. And then you're really starting to think, this is not how the world is. And you really start to pay attention. And then moments before totality, if you're in that path of totality, moments before, you get this ominous feeling that something huge is coming and you know it's the moon's shadow. And even though you know it's coming, it really just is so unexpected. The eclipse chasers actually use the word primitive fear. And for me, the hair on the back of my neck stands up. I always get goosebumps at that point because it's so overwhelming. And then when totality happens, then we have this moment of awe. And the emotion of awe is really complex because we feel in the presence of something greater than us and more powerful than us. And then because of that, it makes us think about our lives in a different way. Then we have that feeling of connectedness and insignificance. You just sort of feel like you're part of something so much greater, and you understand that you only just play a small part. So all the little concerns and everyday life things that happen really doesn't seem that big a deal because it's so much greater. Whether it's the universe or whether it's humanity, people around you, but that feeling of connection is very, very strong. So that insignificance and connection is really empowering and makes you feel so positive. So it's actually good for us. And then during totality, we also, after the awe, there's the euphoria because we know and we can feel that it's coming to an end and we don't want it to end. And so we're just sort of like in this moment of, it's just great. And you just want to maximize that time. And then it just, as suddenly as it comes in, it sweeps away. And then you're left with this massive big downer. And we call it the desire to repeat. You know, it's you just want to see it again. You want to experience it again. And that's the most common question is, when is the next eclipse? Because that's what you feel. So that's really hard to say in a soundbite, right? So all of those things, but all that together, that commonality of experience, we sort of say that's the embodied experience of totality. And I summarize that by saying it happens above us, it happens around us, and it happens within us.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by-in for the people. The nonpartisan Fair Election Center released a report to state and local election officials in February, suggesting ways voter participation can be expanded. Recommendations include expanding voter registration options, making use of public-private partnerships, developing communication plans, and expanding poll worker training. Fair Election Center urges local governments to expand access points for online voter registration in the 42 states which offer it. Instead of just the election department website, it suggests linking voter registration at the DMV, employment security, and other government sites. It also suggests libraries and other public places make computers and voter registration forms available for those without broadband or computer access. Highly mobile populations often don't re-register to vote. Fair Election Center recommends banks and other lenders and landlords and other housing providers offer voter registration information. It also recommends election officials work with schools to conduct voter registration events and with local organizations in underrepresented communities. Voter information outreach continues to be a struggle for smaller election offices. The report recommends a communications plan which includes all modes of social media, voting information in additional languages, and in media for all disabilities. Share the Fair Election Center report with your local officials from AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
AIDS activist Hadiya Broadbent had no choice but to be brave. I'm Bill Newman. This is the Civil Liberties Minute, and that's how The Week magazine began its recent story about Hadiya Broadbent. Hadiya Broadbent's biological mother had been addicted to drugs, and she had been put up for adoption. Then, at age 3, Hadiya was diagnosed with HIV, and she wasn't expected to live past age 5. Hadiya Broadbent's HIV developed into AIDS, and the stigma around AIDS at that time was so great that if she sneezed, her kindergarten teacher sprayed her with Clorox. Hadiya Broadbent was a vivacious child, and she began speaking publicly about AIDS when she was 6. She appeared on Nickelodeon, a special with basketball superstar Magic Johnson just after Magic revealed that he was HIV positive, and on Oprah and Good Morning America. And at age 11 in 1996, she addressed the Republican National Convention where she said, "I am the next Maya Angelou. I may even be the first woman president. I am the future, and I have AIDS." As Magic Johnson said, Hadiya changed the world with her bravery. Thanks to her, millions were educated, stigmas were broken, and attitudes about HIV/AIDS changed. We are indebted to Hadiya Broadbent for her courage and activism and mourn her passing in February at age 39. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1865. That was the day Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox, Virginia. Grant's Union Army successfully cut off Confederate forces at the village of Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. Historians agree the terms were generous to the Confederacy. The surrender marked the beginning of the end of the Civil War, with 3 more key surrenders before the end of May. Half the country was in ruins, with as many as 750,000 dead. In the North alone, millions more lay seriously injured. At least 40,000 formerly enslaved blacks died fighting for their freedom. It was considered the country's turning point. The Civil War ended the slave system, forged a centralized federal government, and created a national structure for the institutional development of public health, veteran care, and aid programs. The era of Reconstruction ushered in a period of hope and opportunity for black freedom, equality, and prosperity. But historian Gregory Downs argues in his book After Appomattox, Military Occupation and the Ends of the War, that the war did not really end in 1865. The South was essentially under military occupation until at least 1871. Downs writes, quote, "By severing the war's conflict from the Reconstruction that followed, it drained meaning from the Civil War and turned it into a family feud, a fight that ended with regional reconciliation. Once white Southern Democrats overthrew Reconstruction, they utilized the Appomattox myth to erase the connection between the popular, neatly concluded Civil War and the continuing battles of Reconstruction." For Eric Foner, the period was one of revolution and counter-revolution, a massive experiment in interracial democracy without precedent. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, because there's lots more of us where we come from. Indeed, where it is currently 48 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs around 70 today, and it could be a bit warmer here at the mothership. Partly cloudy throughout the day with winds light and variable. Some clouds overnight with lows in the mid to low 40s, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Then partly cloudy tomorrow with highs in the mid 70s, which means it could be a tad warmer here at the mothership in Rogue River. Winds light and variable tomorrow. Still having a forecast of rain for the weekend, but that's okay because we like precipitation. Liquid sunshine falling from the sky, nourishing the deep-rooted trees which need it. They do. Grass pollen is rated as high right outside the window in Rogue River proper. Let's see if I'm allergic to grass pollen. The air quality index, though, is in the good range at 21 parts per million, which means it's so nice people will burn their trash because they don't like nice. Oh my, the daytime UV index is rated high at level 6, so take care if you have similar numbers. Wear a hat, at least. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.31 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 100%. Could get muggy. Well, weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 55 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 55 and partly cloudy. Rome is 74 degrees and fair. Oh, Rome. Kabul is 58 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 66 and cloudy. Tokyo is 50 degrees and fair. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 55 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 55 and fair. Chicago, Illinois is 60 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York, New York is 68 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Stephanie Lichtenstein of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Austria faces its biggest espionage scandal in decades as the arrest of a former intelligence officer brings to light evidence of extensive Russian infiltration, lax official oversight, and behavior worthy of a spy novel. Agisto Ott was arrested on March 29th. The 86-page arrest warrant obtained by the AP alleges, among other things, that he handed over cell phone data of former high-ranking Austrian officials to Russian intelligence, helped plot a burglary at a prominent journalist's apartment, and wrote up suggestions for improvement after a Russian-ordered killing in Germany. Ott is suspected of having provided sensitive information to Jan Marsalek, a fugitive fellow Austrian, wanted on suspicion of fraud since the collapse in 2020 of German payment company Wirecard, where he was the chief operating officer. The warrant says chat messages provided by British authorities leak Marsalek directly to the Russian intelligence agency FSB. German and Austrian media have reported that Marsalek is believed to have had connections to Russian intelligence since at least 2014. He is now thought to be in Russia. Thomas Riegler, a historian and espionage expert affiliated with the Austrian Center for Intelligence Propaganda and Security Studies, said the case has the potential for one of the biggest espionage stories in recent Austrian history. The case is special, given its international dimension and the fact that it is not only about espionage, but also about the infiltration of the Austrian political system and the weakening of the country's internal security, he said. Sound familiar? Austria, which was located next to the Iron Curtain during the Cold War and long had good connections with Moscow, is a European member with a policy of military neutrality and a long-standing reputation as a spying center. Final amuse-bouche is brought to us by the hard-working staff at the Agence France-Presse. 27 people are set to go on trial for money laundering in connection with the Panama Papers tax evasion scandal, which revealed how many of the world's wealthy stashed assets in offshore companies. The 2016 revelations rocked governments, exposed high-profile personalities, triggered scores of investigations around the world, and dealt a blow to Panama's reputation as an offshore financial hub. The defendants due to go on trial in the Panamanian criminal court include Jürgen Mossack and Ramon Fonseca Mora, the founders of the now-defunct law firm at the center of the scandal. The leaked trove of 11.5 million files from their company, Mossack Fonseca, implicated in influential figures including billionaires, maybe even alleged billionaires, politicians, even alleged politicians, and even sports stars. Alleged sports stars even. Icelandic Prime Minister Sigmundur David Gunnlaugsson was forced to resign after it was revealed his family had offshore accounts. There was nothing alleged about him being the Prime Minister, because he was. Then Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was disqualified for life from office after being implicated in the documents. Others implicated included former British Premier David Cameron, football star Lionel Messi. He's playing here in the States now. I guess it's okay. Argentina's then President Mauricio Macri, and Spanish filmmaker Pedro Almodovar, to name but a few. The files were leaked to a German newspaper, which shared them with the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. Many of those caught up in the scandal put forward reasons to explain their offshore presence and said they did not act illegally. We were just trying to skip out on our taxes. What's illegal about that? Even so, Mossack Fonseca said in 2018 that it would close due to irreparable damage to its reputation. Well, that's a nice way of putting it. And it's also a nice way of telling you that we have come to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.